If you have a deficiency in shoulder internal or external rotation range of motion, then this exercise will help you to not only improve your range of motion, but also improve the way that your glenohumeral joint and your scapula move together. Hey, what's up? Coach E here from Precision Movement, and today I've got an exercise for you that's going to help you to improve shoulder internal and external rotation range of motion, but more so external rotation range of motion. And you might need this because a lot of people have deficiencies in rotation range of motion of the shoulder because they don't train it. We do a lot of pressing, a lot of pulling, pull-ups, overhead presses, but we don't do a lot of rotational exercises, especially ones designed to improve that range. So this is what we're gonna get today. This exercise makes use of a technique that I use called dissociation. So if you've never been through one of my control series of courses like shoulder control or hip control, then you might not know what dissociation is. So here's a quick primer. Dissociation is a technique that I use that breaks two associated movement patterns. So let's say, for example, your movement pattern, whenever you do shoulder flexion, your lumbar spine goes into extension. That's a very common associated pattern. The problem with that is, let's say you're going to do an overhead press, you're pressing, and then when your arms get up, you go into lumbar extension, and that can put a lot of stress on that spine and result in low back pain, extension-related low back pain. So you could try to fix it when you're doing the exercise itself, but it's better to reprogram it when you're not under so much load, and then you take that and you apply it to when you are under load. And that just makes sense. You wouldn't try to mess with your squat form when you're doing your 1 rep max. You do it just with body weight squats, improve it there, and then you ramp yourself up. With this technique today, we're going to dissociate glenohumeral joint from scapular movement, okay? The other benefit of dissociation is that it improves the activation of the muscles that you're targeting that help you to enter and get it deeper into that range of motion. So, for example, well, I'll break it down when we go through this example, okay? So this is glenohumeral joint rotation from scapular protraction and retraction. So the associated movement pattern, when you go into external rotation, what happens to the scapula? The scapula tend to retract. That's just a natural associated pattern, okay? So we're gonna break that. We're gonna do the exact opposite. When you do dissociation techniques, I like to train it so that when you go into the one range, which is external rotation of the glenohumeral joint, you simultaneously at the same rate go into the opposite movement pattern of whatever other area you're working, which in this case is scapular protraction. So here, you start with your hands at your belly. So that's internal rotation. And you start in full scapular retraction. Okay, so pinch those shoulder blades right together. From here, you go into external rotation as you protract the scapula. Okay, and then at the end range, you keep protracting, keep externally rotating as you take a slow 360 breath. So you keep as much activation as you can in both of those movements, those opposing movements, as you breathe. And then as you go into internal rotation, you retract the scapula. And here, you can press the hands into the belly to ensure that you're activating fully. So you're getting those internal rotators active. You're squeezing the shoulder blades together as you take a deep breath. So that would be one cycle of this dissociation technique. So the key points here, move at the same rate. So as I externally rotate, I protract the scapula. As I internally rotate, I retract the scapula. Okay, that's number one. Number two, when you're at end range, you don't just relax. Okay, I'm at end range, I'm just gonna chill. I'm still trying to internally rotate, drive my hands into my belly, and trying to retract my scapula as much as possible. So I'm keeping those muscles on as much as possible. And number three, integrate the breath so that as you're activating as hard as you can, as much as you can, you do that slow 360 breath. Okay? Because if we can't breathe when we're doing a technique, then that technique is stressful, and you're not able to maximize your endurance whenever you're doing those types of movements. Okay? When you breathe, you bring oxygen, blood flow, facilitates those factors, and when we're learning techniques like this, breathing helps us to better integrate it into our nervous system. Because if we're stressed, we're not going to learn. Okay? You learn when you're relaxed and your parasympathetic nervous system is dominant. Okay, so let me show you this technique again. Associated movement pattern is external rotation with scapular retraction. You could see that and you could feel that if you try it. Dissociated movement pattern is starting with internal rotation of the glenohumeral joint and retraction of the scapula, and then going into external rotation with protraction of the scapula. Hold for a slow 360 breath. Keep activating, and then go in the opposite. And that is one cycle. I recommend 3 cycles to start, and then you increase up to 5 or 6 cycles, and that'll be good. Okay? Now, let me show you why this increases activation and end mobility at end range. It increases the end range. Let's say we do the associated movement pattern, external rotation with scapular retraction. You could see that the external rotators here are short, so these muscles go from the scapula to the glenohumeral, or the head of the humerus, and they cause this movement. Okay? When we get the scapula into protraction, and we're shoving the scapula that way, that just further gets those muscles into their shortened range. And that's why when you do that, you'll feel a little more kind of crampy feeling in the external rotators, especially here. So I'm going to protract, and I can feel those muscles fire up a little bit more, like they're more active. And that's because they're being asked to work in a range that they're not used to. They're not used to being fully externally rotated, fully contracted, and then the scapula going into protraction. They're used to that scapula being in retraction. So that increases that end range, because we're just going from, as opposed to manipulating the humerus and the arm, now we're manipulating the length of the muscle via the position of the scapula. All right? So that's, if you understand biomechanics, you might get what I'm saying there. If you don't understand biomechanics, or that seemed like it was a little bit complex, take your time, digest it, do some more research, do some more study, and you'll understand exactly what I'm saying here. But the key point is the 3 points of the technique, and applying this technique as an activation technique and a warm-up, and for before you're doing any kind of external rotation moves, to get those muscles fired up and working in that end range. Okay, so that is the technique, and that is the concept of dissociation that is really fundamental to the precision movement method that I teach, that helps to break movement patterns so that it opens up movement options for you and helps to improve activation of the muscles into the end ranges that you're working. Hope you enjoy that one. Do it up. It'll make your shoulders feel great and keep those muscles strong and active. And if you're interested in more techniques like this, make sure you check out my shoulder control course. And it's not just techniques, it's a progressive 3-phase course that brings you from the fundamentals like this up until functional integration, where we're training exercises that have high transfer to the gym and to sport. Okay? And if you're just looking for more ideas, more exercises to use, then make sure you subscribe here on YouTube. You can click the link down below or at the end of this video, and you'll get our latest videos. Okay? Hope you enjoyed that. See you next time. Peace.